Hello listeners. I'm recording this because a few hours ago I woke up from a nightmare, and there's this really weird coincidence, but I'll get into that in a minute. The dream was about this story I read in, I think, maybe 2001, maybe 2002, I can't quite remember, on a forum I used to go to called bertforums.net, which is a forum built around this Norwegian indie band called Berft. I can't really pronounce their names all that well, but their songs were okay, but I hardly ever listened to them. I only went there because my older sister did, and I stayed because the forum itself was full of awesome people. Sadly, the forum no longer exists, and I can't find any sites that have archived it. I met most of my current friend group there too, and that's kind of a shame that's just all gone. It was a really big deal to me when it shut down. Anyway, I was kind of getting off track, so back to the story. There was this thread entitled Campfire Stories, where we would post whatever spooky little stories we knew. It was mostly just silly stuff like Hook Hand, Hitchhikers, and Bloody Mary. One day there was a new post on the thread by this guy or gal whose username was Redgrowth. This was their first post here on this thread, and damn did it creep me out. I mean, I don't mean to overhype it or anything, but I'm still having nightmares over this, and it's been a decade. Going to try that. Preface the story that Redgrowth told. Our story begins and opens in the park of Kentucky. The sun is bright, the grass is green, and there's not a cloud in the sky. A young woman sits on the park bench, babysitting two lovely kids. She had a name, but I can't remember. I'm sorry. Everything is fine, the kids are playing, no one's getting hurt, kids are happy, she's happy, everyone's happy, everything's perfect. And then suddenly, she feels a sharp pain in her left arm. Just a bug, and she swats it, no big deal. The rest of the day goes well, the kids' parents pick them up. The woman goes home and sleeps calmly, ready for the next wonderful day. In the morning she awakes, a bit of a rash on her left arm. No big deal, bug bites will sometimes do that. She tried various rash creams and blams and herbal remedies, but nothing seemed to make any difference. She goes about her business, back to her job as a babysitter. Everything's fine, everything's perfect. 3 days, the rash is still there. The patch of skin on her arm was soft, molted red against the pink. The odd thing about the rash is that it didn't itch. Not at all. She expected it to, but it did not. On the 4th day, she got a little worried as the rash was getting bigger, redder, more swollen. It wasn't getting any better. She was worried, but everything was still fine. Everything was still perfect. So her arm was just a little swollen, so the kids stare. So freaking what? 2 weeks. She had to rest for 2 weeks. Every day she'd think about it, hoping it'd just heal up. But it didn't. She got more and more worrisome. She wore long sleeve shirts to hide it. The kids she babysat would stare at her. They thought it was gross and possibly contagious. She assured them that it wasn't, and secretly, she could only really hope. 4 weeks. 4 weeks now she had the rash. At this point, it became a part of her daily routine. Get up, make coffee, apply rash cream, eat breakfast, go to work. It was normal for her now. And perhaps that is the part that scared her the most. She stopped worrying about the rash. It didn't itch, it didn't hurt, it didn't get any better. But it wasn't getting any worse now either. She could live with this. Everything was fine. 1 month after the bite, she wakes up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night. She had horrible dreams about a hideous insectile moths. Exoskeleton limbs writhing in the blood of her arm from the bite. She got up, she went to the bathroom, she looked in the mirror, and her rash, still just a red mess. Puffy, ugly, soft, terrible. Now she had those little red dots on her eyelids. Tiny little pinpricks, hardly noticeable. With nothing else she could really do at midnight, She tried to get some more sleep. She made a doctor's appointment, and she showed up to the clinics. The sterile white walls, the medical apparatuses, the smiling faces on the receptionist. She showed her rash. The doctor recommended a pill to reduce the swelling to help her body fight back, and she was relieved that she might be able to get rid of these things. However, 4 months, more nightmares every night. This rash is still red and more swollen than ever before. She hadn't really noticed. It didn't itch. It does nothing, and she hated it. She used to cover her arms in the public. She'd take pills that the doctor prescribed, and that did nothing. She didn't go out much. She didn't pay attention to the kids. She started forgetting things. She couldn't even remember the kids' names. She had trouble paying attention. Kids got hurt really bad. She got fired for negligence, but she didn't care. At this point, she hated those kids. 6 months. 6 months she'd casually slump around her house, scratching at her rash, living on her parents' money. She hated herself for it, but she couldn't find a motivation to find a new client or get a new job. She'd been back to the doctor a few times. Nothing new, just medicine that didn't work. Nothing seems to work. The doctor said that she reviewed the photos of her rash. It was getting worse after all. Just slowly is all. The rash used to be a little pink area in her forearm. Now her whole left arm was red and disgusting. Almost like she had leprosy or something. She'd gotten used to it. Seeing her arm, she got used to it. Something that used to be shocking was now normal. 8 months. 8 months, her rash started to itch. It's horrible. She scratched on it till it bleeds. It hurts like hell. She hates her rash. She hates her life. She hated everything. Her eyes were now red and puffy. Her voice is pained. She vomits up most of what she eats. Every waking moment is hell. And every sleeping moment is worse. Every time she closed her eyes, she'd see them. Hideous, terrible, crawling, evil little bugs. She was haunted by terrible dreams. Dreams of the kids she babysat, ripping her skin to shreds to reveal grotesque, insectile interiors. Dreams that her arm would strangle her in the night. Dreams that every inch of her body was being gnawed by tiny, hideous jaws. Dreams that were filled with otherworldly noises that she knew were nothing. She had heard but felt like blood-curdling screams of agony. She barely felt the cold steel of the gun in her scarred, swollen hand. Every day she'd pull the trigger, forgetting that it was empty. Every day she'd scream at the walls and knowing nothing what she was saying. She kept pulling out in the middle of the day, waking up screaming. Her landlord got fed up with the noises and came into her apartment one day. And he was shocked at what he saw. He looked around her apartment for his tenant. Blood smeared the walls, festering piles of vomit everywhere. Everything was tossed to the floor. He crept slowly through the eerie rooms. The bathtub was coated in dry blood, making the thing look like a grotesque horror rejected from the Silent Hill series. Bits of flesh on the bathroom mirror and shattered bits of bloody glass was all over the furniture. Bite marks littered everything that was in the apartment that wasn't nailed down. He looked, but she was nowhere to be found. The police were called. The building was condemned. The young woman was never seen again. Well, that brings me to today. I think I've been seeing her in my nightmares. I got some of the details wrong, but there it is. Redgrowth's Campfire story. I wish I could find an archive for the real one. But this will have to do for now. Alright. Now that odd coincidence that I mentioned earlier is that I woke up today with this weird little rash on my leg. Here's hoping that it's absolutely nothing, and it's nothing to get too worried over. It just doesn't itch. And that was the Redgrowth Campfire story. What do you guys think of it? Do you think it was a lovely little tale of terror, or do you think that it's not deserving of its 3.5-star rank on the creepypasta.org? All that is to be known is that the submission was done by a character known as Morpheus, or Morphimus. I cannot pronounce the name. It has about 1,076 views, and total reviews seem to be positive. All I know is that this story, when I read it, seemed to be pretty interesting. However, there were some things that seemed to boggle the story, in my opinion. Well, first off, we don't really know much about this character. In fact, I really wish that this story had more of that campfire feel, as it would be interesting if the character actually did some framing devices to frame it around a campfire. Or maybe, you know, to talk about it in a sense that would make it be more worthy of such a story. However, instead we get a tale of someone's descent into insanity. Unsure if there is some sort of paranormal, biological, or all-natural way of explaining her plight. Now, this plight may be explained through natural processes or not, but the overall issue is that we don't know much about the character. We hear about her descent for sure, yes, and we hear about the weird oddities, but it's almost like you took a horror story, gutted out all the things that gave the character's character, and then just left in all the jump scares and moments that were supposed to build tension. While on their own, these moments could have been fine. The fact that there's no character to be emotionally invested into makes the story overall less enjoyable. Although I think this is really well written and really awesome, I just feel that it could be better. And on its own, I feel that it's a solid story to be, well, sure. But till the next time, I'd like to tell you that I'm That Creepy Reading, and I'm signing off for now. Be on the lookout for tomorrow's story, as it will be a lovely tale of terror.